Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today, we're going to be doing another NFL draft grade episode, and this one's going to be over the AFC West this time. So, the Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, and Raiders. I'm going to go through each team pick by pick, give each pick a grade. And for the actual picks, it's just going to be A, B, C, D, or F. For the overall pick, there may be a plus or minus if I feel one was warranted. But with that being said, we're going to get into it real quick, and it's going to start off with the Denver Broncos. So they started off their draft with Patrick Surtain, the second out of Alabama, arguably the best corner in this draft. I don't think it was a bad spot value-wise to pick him. It was an interesting fit since they already brought in Ronald Darby this offseason, as well as Kyle Fuller from the Bears as well. So they have those two already. Bryce Callahan, kind of that slot corner. So it'd be real interesting to see what they do. But, you know, when you go against some of these teams, when you're going against the Chiefs and the Chargers twice each for the year, you're going to need some corners. And, you know, they had a lot of banged up injuries for their cornerback unit last year overall. So definitely a position of strength now instead of a position of weakness. But overall, I did give that pick a B. I think it's a pretty solid pick. Probably not their biggest area of need, obviously. And passing up quarterback, you know, when Justin Fields is on the board, that was kind of debatable, just depending on what your feelings are about Justin Fields. In the second round, they actually traded up for Javonte Williams, the running back out of North Carolina. You know, one of the big three running backs in this year's class. I said Denver was a sneaky spot for a running back to go. You know, Melvin Gordon's just got 1 year left on his deal. I believe he's like 28 years old already right now. So, you know, a little wear and tear on his body. So getting a young guy in here, Javonte Williams, like one of the youngest running backs in this year's class, definitely makes a lot of sense. I think it's a pretty good fit. I did give this pick a B overall as well. And then they went with Quinn Miners out of Wisconsin Whitewater. You know, if you guys were paying attention to the Senior Bowl, his pro day, stuff like that, he drew a lot of attention. Might play guard, might play center. I think it's a decent fit here because you're bringing him in. You're going to push Dalton Reisner or Lloyd Cushenberry. And if nothing else, he's going to be a solid depth piece on that offensive line. Somebody that you can probably develop a little bit over time and hopefully turns into a good starting piece on that offensive line. So I did give that pick a B as well. And then Baron Browning, if you guys actually were watching the TNF live stream that we did for day 2, I pretty much called this pick. Baron Browning, linebacker, makes a lot of sense for them overall. You know, they got Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson, but Jewell pretty much wasn't the best in coverage for the longest time until last year, so that's kind of weird. But I think Baron Browning come in, develop him. When one of those two guys leaves, can step right in and play right away at that point in time. And with that Baron Browning pick, I gave it a B as well. And then after that, they went with back-to-back safety picks with Caden Stearns and Jamar Johnson. I'm just going to combine these two together. Really interesting here. So Jamar Johnson here is a tremendous value. I thought, you know, he probably should have been gone already. Caden Stearns, super athletic safety out of Texas. Both these guys you can probably bring in, develop a little bit. Kareem Jackson's just on a 1 year deal, so one of these two guys is probably going to end up starting next year. Caden Stearns, if nothing else, he's going to be a very good special teamer just because of how athletic he is. But I gave both these picks a B. I think Jamar Johnson, if they didn't already draft Caden Stearns right before him, it probably would have been closer to an A pick. But, you know, kind of double dipping on that position brings the grade down just a little bit. And then in the 6th round, they went with Seth Williams. If you guys know me, I'm not a big Seth Williams fan, truther, whatever you want to call it. Didn't really impress me at all, like watching the film. Nothing special about him. If you watch just the highlights, you think he's the best wide receiver in the world. But if you actually go down and break the film, there's lots of drops there. He's not really great at any one thing. So he's more of a developmental player than anything. They already got a lot of wide receivers ahead of him. Kind of feels like a wasted pick to me. I gave it a C overall. Not a bad value, but just not an area of need really either. And then in the 7th round, they went Kerry Vincent out of LSU, a cornerback, mainly played slot corner, could probably play some safety in the NFL too. Really fast guy, former track athlete. You know, looking at a guy that really developmental player, special teamer, rotational guy in the future. So definitely not a bad pick in the 7th round though. And for that Kerry Vincent pick, I did give it an A just because I thought he would have gone like 5th, 6th round. Even though, you know, it's not one that they really need to do. But, I mean, in the 7th round, when you're taking a high upside type of guy that has showed some success in college as well, definitely can't go wrong there. Then with one of the other 7th round picks that they did have was Jonathan Cooper out of Ohio State. Pretty good pass rusher. I thought he'd go to a team that would be more of a 4-3 defensive end. They play 3-4, so I guess they're going to have him play 3-4 outside linebacker. Kind of develop him along there. You know, if Chubb's not ready to go right away in the season, maybe he's a rotational piece at that point in time. And then with their last pick, they kind of went with the opposite, more of that 3-4 defensive end with Marquise Spencer out of Mississippi State. He's an okay player. Probably a 7th-round pick is about where he should have gone. So nothing wrong there. I did give his pick a C, and that Jonathan Cooper pick was a B. So overall, the Denver Broncos had an interesting draft. A lot of Bs overall. 1A in there, 2 Cs. So overall, I did give their draft a B. I thought it was pretty solid overall. Addressed some needs, addressed some areas of depth, and I think they're going to have a pretty good team. The one real question is just the quarterback position. Is Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater going to step it up? If not, they're probably out next year. Do they trade for Aaron Rodgers? That's definitely still on the table as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to the Kansas City Chiefs now. And the Chiefs did not have a first-round pick because they did trade that first-round pick away in the Orlando Brown trade. So you got a quality offensive tackle there, which they really needed in the Super Bowl. So definitely can't go wrong there. We're not going to factor that into this, though. But second-round pick, they went with Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton's a pretty good linebacker out of Missouri. Probably not the best in coverage, but a lot of people had him mocked in the first round early on, early second round. They got him, towards the back third of the second round, so definitely a good value there. I did give that pick a B. Addressed kind of an area of need for them, or an area that they could at least use some more depth. And then with the other second-round pick that they did have, they picked Creed Humphrey out of Oklahoma. He was actually my best center in this year's draft class. Getting him at the back of the second round was just insane. Third center off the board. I don't know what the Packers are doing. They took Josh Myers like the pick before that, and then the Chiefs just ran up to the podium and took Creed Humphrey. I don't know if it's just because he's a left-handed center and they didn't want that or what, but this is a very good center. This is a guy that's probably going to be your center for the next 10 years. I know they got Austin Blythe on a 1-year contract, so maybe he starts this year and then Humphrey plays next year. Or maybe Humphrey just plays center this year and Blythe has a little bit of guard versatility as well, so maybe he can move over there or just kind of be a backup across the line. So that Creed Humphrey pick, definitely an A pick there. That was tremendous, tremendous value. Probably one of the biggest steals of the second round overall. In the fourth round, they went with Joshua Kandua, defensive end. Pretty raw prospect, pretty lanky, out of Florida State. So you're shooting for some upside there. They definitely need some additional pass rushers. Hopefully a guy you can bring in, develop, and turns into some. I gave that pick a B overall. Then in the fifth round, they went with Noah Gray, tight end out of Duke. He's a guy that I like quite a bit. I think in Kansas City offense, they could actually use him in a few different ways. Kind of more like that H-back move tight end than a traditional tight end. So I think there's different ways that Andy Reid can get creative and use him in their system. So I gave that pick a B as well. Then the other fifth-round pick that they did have was Cornell Powell out of Clemson. Pretty much a 1-year guy at Clemson, even though he was a redshirt senior essentially. But finally he got on the field and produced. So it'd be real interesting to see how he performs at the NFL level. I thought he was a fair wide receiver, probably like a 6th, 7th round pick. Nothing that got me like too overly excited. That's pretty much where he went. They did have a little bit of a need at wide receiver, so I did give this pick a B overall. And then last but not least, they went with Trey Smith out of Tennessee, an offensive guard. And Trey Smith had a couple different medical issues that caused him to fall in the draft. He had some blood clots at one point in time, I do believe, during his college career. But very, very good player, very strong. Probably could get him to refine a little bit of his technique, but this is a guy that should have gone in the second round, and they got him in the sixth, like the back end of the 6th round. So this is definitely like an A+ pick if there was an A+. But overall, very solid draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. I did give it a B+ overall. They got a lot of value, addressed quite a few positions in need as well. So very solid draft. And then next we'll move over to the Chargers, who had quite a bit of an interesting draft, I'll do say. They started off in the first round picking Rashawn Slater at number 13 overall. This was arguably the biggest steal of the first round. A guy that was probably going to be a top 10 pick. They got him at number 13. Guy that's going to come in right away, probably play left tackle for you. Don't have any major concerns about him. Obviously, he did opt out last year, but this is a guy that's going to come in, plug and play right away, so that's an easy A pick. Then in the second round, they went with Asante Samuel Jr., and this is a guy, that was getting mocked a lot in first rounds as well, so definitely addresses a position of need at cornerback since they did let go of Casey Hayward. It was another A pick for me. Not too much else I can say here. Just a great pick all around. And then they took Josh Palmer out of Tennessee, wide receiver. He's a guy that I did have my eye on quite a bit. Wide receiver is kind of a position of need for the Chargers. I know they got some value out of Teron Johnson and Jalen Guyton last year, but they're undrafted free agents. They're really not that good either. And then Mike Williams is on the last year of his deal as well. With this pick, you're kind of getting a more raw version of Mike Williams. Hopefully you kind of develop him for a year. Then when Mike Williams is gone, he can take over that role. But definitely an intriguing prospect. He did very, very well against SEC corners. However, if you look at his stats overall in the years that he played at Tennessee, they weren't that good. But Tennessee has had terrible, terrible quarterback play. So he's kind of like an enigma. You don't really know what you're going to get with him. There was a couple other wide receivers on the board that I did like a little bit better than him, but definitely not a bad pick by any means. So I did give this pick a B overall. And then we moved down to their other third-round pick, which was Trey McKitty out of Georgia, tight end. Didn't have a ton of college production. Pretty athletic guy, but he's had a little bit of knee injuries as well. So it's kind of a hit or miss pick here at the end of the third round. I thought he'd probably be more like a fifth, sixth round pick. So this was a little bit of reach for me. They do have a position of need at tight end, which is Jared Cook and Donald Parham on the roster as of right now before the draft. So I just think there's other tight ends you could have picked and it probably would have panned out better. So I'm going to give this one a C overall because it addressed a position of need, but it was kind of a reach at the same time. Then in the fourth round, they went with Chris Rump, the second out of Duke, outside linebacker, 3-4 outside linebacker, defensive end type. He's going to be that edge rusher for them as they move over to the system with Brandon Staley. His dad's actually a coach for the Chicago Bears right now. So I was kind of surprised the Bears didn't take him. Chris Rump, I thought he'd be more like a fifth round pick, but this was pretty close regardless. I did give this pick a B overall just because it's a good scheme fit. Then in the fifth round, they went with Brendan Hymes out of Nebraska, offensive tackle. You know, he is really a guy that didn't impress me at the Senior Bowl. I thought maybe like a seventh round pick out of him, but he goes here in the fifth round. Kind of a position of need, but he's probably going to be backup swing tackle, developmental type of guy. I don't think he's any better than Storm Norton, who they did have as that swing tackle last year. I think maybe he kicks inside the guard eventually too. So we'll just see what ends up happening with him in his career. But I did give that pick a C overall. Just kind of a reach pick for me. Then in the sixth round, they went with Nick Neiman, super athletic linebacker out of Iowa. Probably a little raw, still have to develop him up a little bit, but I did give that pick a B grade overall. I think it's definitely a guy that, you know, his stock really rose on his pro day, but definitely offers some upside on special teams, if nothing else, and kind of somebody you can bring in and develop overall. Then with their other sixth round pick, they went with Larry Roundtree out of Missouri, running back. Super productive career at the University of Missouri. A little bit more productive early on in his career than he was later on. Did a little bit of kick returning early on in his career too, if I remember correctly. But a guy that can come in, kind of push Josh Kelly, who they did pick last year. Hopefully one of these two guys emerges to pair along with Austin Eckler. But solid pick overall there. I did give that a B as well. And then last but not least, we had Mark Webb out of Georgia. He's a safety, super athletic pro day. Crazy like broad jump if I remember correctly, but you know, he played at a big program, super athletic, bring in, going to be a special teams ace, and he's going to be a developmental safety at the same time. Definitely can't go wrong with that pick, so I did give it a B as well. And then overall for their team grade, I did give them a B overall. They had a couple A's in the beginning, but then, you know, there was a couple of reach picks in there as well with McKitty and Brendan Hymes out of Nebraska, so it kind of averaged out to a B, but the picks that they did get early on, I really did like quite a bit. So overall, it was a pretty solid draft for the Chargers. I think they really addressed a lot of needs that they did have. I think their team's going to be a lot better this year, and I'm really excited to see what some of these rookies do for the Chargers team. And then last but not least, you guys have probably all been waiting for, and it's the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, we know the Raiders have been kind of the kings of reaching in the NFL draft. And they did it once again at pick number 17 with Alex Leatherwood. If you see here, even on ESPN, you know, his overall grade in this class was number 60 overall. So they had a second round grade on him. I had a second round grade on him as well. Supposedly Tom Cable really liked him. And they think he can play offensive tackle. I don't really think he can play offensive tackle. There was better offensive tackles still on the board. I think he's going to end up playing guard at the NFL level, which number 17 overall, like picking a guard, it's not really that great. And I think there's just better options on the board for them. They had a lot of different needs. So that pick was a D for me. You know, it's not that he's a terrible player by any means, but just a massive reach in the first round. Then in the second round, they kind of redeemed themselves. They traded up for Trayvon Moehrig out of TCU. Arguably the best safety in this class, depending on who you talk to. They definitely had a area of need at safety. So he's going to come in, probably plug and play right away for them. So that pick ended up being an A. Then they got down to the third round. Their first third round pick that they had out of these back-to-back picks, they took outside linebacker / D end out of Buffalo Malcolm Kuntz. Malcolm Kuntz was a guy that some people had a 6th-round grade on. I had a 5th-round grade on him. Kind of an undersized defensive end. I know they got Khalil Mack out of Buffalo, so maybe they're trying to chase that mold again, and Gus Bradley coming over as their defensive coordinator, he traditionally likes pass rushers that are a little bit undersized, a little bit quicker that way. So maybe he fits that mold. Malcolm Kuntz is also coming off an injury, so it's just kind of a reach here overall. Definitely a position of need, so I'm going to give it a C overall, but I think there's just other guys out there that would have been a little bit better fit for them. But hey, if that's what they want to do in their defense, that's what they want to do as well. Then the next pick, they went with safety Divine Diablo out of Virginia Tech. And this guy is pretty much built almost exactly the same as Cam Chancellor was. Gus Bradley was, the defensive coordinator for Cam Chancellor when they had the Legion of Boom in Seattle. So they're trying to build that kind of mold again, I think. There's been some people that think Diablo might move to linebacker. Some people said this was a little bit of reach, but there was a lot of NFL teams that were pretty high on him as well. Very, very good athlete for someone of his size. Be interesting to see what they do if they keep him at safety or if they move him to linebacker here as well. But definitely a good pick. I did give it a B overall for that pick. Then we get down to the 4th round, and they already took 2 safeties. Now they take Tyree Gillespie out of Missouri. A very good safety, a guy that I did like a lot in this class. Super athletic. But you already took 2 safeties right before him. It's like, I don't know what you're doing unless you're making Diablo a linebacker right away, or you're trying to do like the Patriots and then Diablo is your Patrick Chung and you're playing 2 other safeties at the same time. It'll be real interesting to see how this all plays out, but I do like all 3 of the safeties they have, even though I don't like Morig as much as most people did. They're definitely addressing the position that was a position of need, if nothing else. And for the Gillespie pick, I did give it a C. I'd probably give it a B if they didn't already take 2 safeties, but it's just the fact that they already took 2 safeties. I'm like, you can't do that. And then we moved down to the 5th round. They took Nate Hobbs out of Illinois. Super athletic pro day. I don't know too much about him otherwise, but like his pro day was off the charts. But this was a guy that was pretty much like 7th round pick, undrafted free agent, and they took him in the 5th round. So a little bit of reach there too, but a position of need. Hopefully he works out. Hopefully he really develops into a good NFL corner. So that is the C pick as well. Then last but not least, they had 7th round pick Jimmy Morrissey out of Pittsburgh. A little bit lower on my center position. I probably would have took Drake Jackson, who ended up going undrafted, over him, but kind of a position of need. Hopefully he develops into a little bit of something, but C grade overall there. And then that was all the picks for the Raiders. Like I said, really interesting draft. They had a couple of reach picks in there. Drafted on the 3rd safety didn't make a lot of sense to me, but overall the grade that I did give them was a C-. It's definitely not the worst draft in the world, but like out of their division, by far the worst. So hopefully these guys end up working out for the Las Vegas Raiders, but we'll just have to see. With that being said, that's all I got for the AFC West draft grades. If you guys have any different grades than I had, please leave them down in the comments below. Definitely interested to see what your guys' thoughts are. If you guys are a fan of one of these AFC West teams, be sure to let me know as well. Let me know how you think your team did in the draft. And with that being said, if you guys liked and enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Definitely would appreciate it, as well as a comment just to let me know that you like what we're doing. If there's anything else you'd like to see on the channel coming up, please be sure to let me know as well. And then with that being said, if you are new to the channel and haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. It helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And that's truly one for you, the viewers, helping you guys with your fantasy football teams, helping you guys with your DFS, whether it's NBA or NFL. Talking all the different football news this offseason. So now we finished up the AFC side of the NFL draft grades. I'll be starting to do the NFC grades as well coming up soon. Hopefully the first one's out tomorrow. There'll be 4 more videos. Definitely be sure to check those ones out as well. If you haven't already checked out the AFC North, South, and East, be sure to check those videos out as well. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for today's video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. And last but not least, I just want to give a special shout out to each and every one of you watching today's video. I truly do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.